coffee. Cheers, Auntie.
Cheers.
This is not chai,
Drinking
though.
chai.
I know, real. All right. Oh, this is like
Namaste.
this is more like Mr. Burns, you know?
Frenzy.
I reference this meeting as the meeting of us taking over the world.
What's the day today? June 3rd?
Yes.
And how long do we want to go this time? 'Cause I don't actually, we went we have an hour long recording from last time, but I don't think it was all.
Let's go for like 20 minutes.
Okay, action. Action meeting. You think we can go for 20 minutes?
Yes. Okay, let's go for half. Let's go for an indefinite period of time. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello and welcome. I need to lean on this.
I don't know. This is our second video, so we're
I
learning.
think the audio worked fine last time, so
Great.
and I was leaning further away. I'd
Okay.
be less slouchy.
Okay, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I woke up at like a serious hour and like it was actually really beautiful because the birds were so loud. And I was like, it's so meditative out here. What do I do?
Did you come out here?
A little bit here and a little bit in my room.
And you just woke up, like, it wasn't an alarm thing.
But I like kind of thought about like, because we're doing this, I kind of thought about like, dude, like people would wake up that early to cook food and stuff.
Gotta meditate at 4:30.
Yeah, like meditate at the crack of dawn. My mom is like meditating when the sun rises and closes, sets, is like optimal, like heaven opening time. I don't know. We don't use the word heaven, but like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I love that. But I'm also never up that early.
It's kind of the Harry Potter, like if you watched Harry Potter at the end, okay.
Sorry, I was born in the early 80s.
I was born in the mid 80s.
I know, there's the generational divide.
Well, in the last movie, the snitch that he has, it's like like that Dumbledore gave him. It's like I open at the close, and I think about that all the time. I open at the close. Like think about it, right? Like it's like kind of like sunrise and sunset. It's like I open at the close, or like I close at the open. Like it's kind of this. Okay, Harry Potter reference.
You have to start way, way before that for you.
How are you?
I'm great. I actually love it when it rains, so I feel like really grateful to be inside while it's raining. We got a really beautiful vantage point here.
A bug-free vantage point.
Totally. With so much greenery and like all these plants and stuff, like definitely this is a better view than my last view. And even that was kind of said to me earlier today. So I love this is like our little studio.
It is our studio.
Imagine episode 28 is like light, boom, mic,
I
boom,
love
mic.
that. It's our studio. It's
B-roll.
our jungle studio. And we know that you're going to hear the rain on this mic. So I kind of like it. Yeah.
Ambiance.
Well, we came prepared. Coffee.
That's a fucking strong coffee.
It is very strong.
I'm sorry. I have to work out the proportions of this maker.
But we're ready.
All right. And it's also day 2, so there's so many things that I know we can talk about, and there's also some near-term decisions.
Well, you told me 3 things. We're only allowed to talk about 3 things.
At all, and I'm counting your 3 things here in my margin.
I have a meeting agenda for myself.
Okay.
And I will share it.
You want to lead then? Do you have something you want to start with the first thing on your list?
No, you can start.
This coffee is so strong.
So
This will be a 4-hour meeting. Okay. So I'm interested in just getting a small vector on like some of our branding elements, because I think people are paying attention to the things that we're saying and posting. And I love that we're just like putting stuff out because it's what's current for us. And I think that even though it's a 30-day project, 26-day project now, I think it'll be useful for us to have some sort of consistency in the icon, the colors, and that sort of thing. And so the place I'd like to start inside that is proposing that we use one of two well-known emojis.
Oh, I saw that. Okay.
To signify the Thanks Auntie concept. And like, this is not just like, I was playing around with different stuff, playing different pictures. But what I find really interesting about the two that I'm proposing, so one is the join hands, which actually apparently is a high five. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
No, everyone uses it as like the bless emoji,
right.
The thank you emoji,
yeah.
Bless up,
and
you know, namaste.
It's by like billions of people worldwide on their phones.
Made that emoji. Tech bros. Tech bros made it. What do tech pros do?
Also, it turns out, if you want to get super nerdy, there's a council in Japan that decides who does the emojis. And you have to do this paperwork process, which is in part why there's so many Japanese emojis.
Are we going to submit an emoji?
Okay, we could go there. But one is, I think that one, as much as it's claimed to be a high five, it clearly means different things to different people, including expressions of gratitude and thanks. And so I think thanks, Auntie, thank you, join hands. That's sort of like one thing. And the other one I really like, this one actually came out, I think, last year, is what everyone refers to as the Italian emoji.
What is it?
Like this. Which, like that old Russell Peters bit, says that this means what the fuck in Italian.
Yeah.
But then you can read all kinds of interpretations in Italian, and it's like basically like checking someone's self. But on the Indian side, the Russell Peters bit is that this hand sign in India means I'm hungry, or do you want to eat? Like it'd be like this.
Oh yeah, like Kana. Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
So those are two room for interpretation, perfectly understood in like the Indian context. And I think like emojis are just well understood, you know? So I think like taking something that's already built art that can be easily popped onto anything, has some familiarity, comes in brown skin, makes it really like accessible for us to use immediately. And we are taking some thread of that and claiming it for this purpose, and not just letting the Unicode Society decide what the initial purpose was, or like one culture take over the whole meaning of a hand gesture, because we all have hands and we all use them for different things. Anyway. So that's a place I'd like to put that on the table, because that icon I think could become really iconic here. It's also very like familiar to people.
Since you already just like fully explained it, should we just talk about it right now?
Let's talk about it.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I low-key woke up at like 4 something in the morning, and you went to sleep later and changed our brand identity while I was sleeping.
I'm constantly changing it. This is like Twitter. If you look again, it'll change again.
I didn't like this. It was like really like, what are you trying to say? It was like, it felt like
aggressive. Because
it didn't feel welcoming. It wasn't like, also I think it was too zoomed in. It was just like the hand. And like this is like, I don't know, more clear to me. But I also saw that we did a survey, and the survey results were pretty like even.
Last I checked, it was more for this than for this. But it was like sample of 20 people.
Do I get to super vote? Do I get a super vote?
Of course. And then I get a super vote. So this is like, I think I know where you're going to end up on this.
I'm open. I'm open. I really like the Thanks Auntie, the name of like what we're creating, because it's so like, man, growing up in Toronto, like anyone that's had an Eastern friend knows the auntie thing. And like you walk into a house, like it's not just Indian, right? It's like, we talked about this last time, like it's all sorts of cultures. And so I think we just like really hit a note of like food culture, at least for me. And I think there's opportunity for people to engage. And so the emoji or the logo, I'm not going to get sticky about it because I got other sticky things to talk to you.
Okay. So that one's a coin toss.
Okay.
Like neither of them is offensive. Both seem appropriate. Both could work.
But let's take a step back for a second and like understand and share also like the premise of this month is, I mean, we merge on like tech terms, right? Like this is like an MVP, like a minimal viable product. This is like a prototype. This is a beta testing. Like that's like the startup lingo, like dimension of this. But then if we think about the artist lingo dimension of this, it's like we're in an artist residency. Like we're creating, and the parallels of both of these is that it's a container. It's an enclosed container. So we're creating this container, an artist residency, to like experiment and like hit the far-reaching walls of this container. But the container really only being time and resources, not about limitations on ideation or the constant, the K constant of change that we choose to invoke, kind of thing. It's like, let's like dream far and wide, but know that we have like a remainder of 26 days and a suitcase full of spices arriving tomorrow that has been partially seized by the Costa Rican government. So like,
hope they know how to cook with them.
Yeah, we'll see what we actually end up with. Yeah. And so I think we could change the emoji fucking hourly, if not daily,
what has
if
happened
not minute. We should just get a bot to change it constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Just for consistency, because like we're also doing a pop-up next week at a hotel here, and they've asked us for a logo, and that's going to go on a print flyer.
Print flyer.
They're going to print it and put it around because they want to convince the people that are staying at the hotel to join the pop-up.
Right.
And we're going to post it from their social accounts, and we'll boost it from our social accounts. So there will be a little bit of like a stamping in a moment of time to hold one version of this.
Wait, they're putting it on like
their account,
like on Instagram?
Duh.
Wow.
What do you mean? Wow, this is real. It's like not a draft. It's everything is print.
No, I know, but
Full
like
print.
it's just like
It's pretty cool though.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, that doesn't really change my stance of like openness to it. I do like this one the best out of the two because it's also respectful. I think of aunties. I think of respect as elderly people. I think of like this kindness, this thank you in this generosity as well. Hello, auntie. Goodbye, auntie. Thank you, auntie. Kind of like sentiment. So I would imagine that would be used more in a real life interaction than this is like, hey, beta, do you want some food? And then even then, you're talking to a child.
Really?
Yeah, you're not really.
You never use that with people.
I think it's more like a language or like a shorthand at times, but like I grew up with like, beta kanakao, like, do you want to eat? Like, you know, and that's not really this. Yeah.
Okay. Good background. Related to that, colors.
Oh, we're going on a whole branding scheme. Okay.
As well, because we're mounting up this like mindset. Colors. We don't really like aggressively need them, but yeah, for consistency again. Where do you think our inspiration for colors should come from?
Well, I mean, thinking about India, right? Like you were saying, 37 different like food types, huge states, like 1.4 billion people. I don't hear, when you say colors, I don't actually hear the word color. What my first impression is, it goes to textile. It goes to fabric.
It did for me too.
Right? Okay, cool, right? You said that, right? You said Indira Gandhi, but, and like, who's the person that like tie?
For a classic, that's like 40s.
Yeah.
Like the inception of, not the inception, but like the founding, the independence of India, which is then that's a question for us too, is like, are we talking to our grandparents and like the color schemes that they would recognize?
I mean, okay, so we are part of the Indian diaspora. So are our parents, right? And
then let's bring it here, because we are the only two like key holders of this diaspora. So this means something to us and maybe nothing to anybody else.
We're holding it down.
I want to think from like their perspective, right? There's people at a hotel whipping around. They're here for a week and they're invited to join this Indian food thing. Well, this little neighborhood we're in right now. Yeah. You know? So I want to honor like histories, and I also want to acknowledge that it needs to be consumable for the people here. So it's like this cross-act the Venn diagram of like inspiration for colors and then also colors that you might expect to see and consume being 25 to 45 in a beach town in Costa Rica, which I wonder what that overlap even looks like.
Well, you could see it here, right? Like the millennial palette of like the cleansed mint green palette exists here.
Yoga schemes.
The yoga scheme, right? It's like, the let's all have succulent plants. Oh, wait, we live in the jungle. It's an entire plant garden. Like it's
and we're paleo food and mostly vegan. So green's gonna show up.
We're catering towards like, for lack of a better word, like a hipster crowd, right?
Right.
Like to be like generic about it. Yeah. Right. A surfer hipster town. Surfer spiritual yogic hipster town. How do you go? Like you can get and mix in a few like
so more modern in that sense, like more nature. Modern in the sense that, like, if I think about textiles, and we're looking at the Indira Gandhi color palette, there's a lot of these like soft colors, yellows and soft pinks and like emerald greens and stuff, which I mean, fuck, there's like tons of emerald green here in the leaves. But fuck, like just look at this. Almost like we take a picture of this and just lift. That might be a simple way to do it. Just like draw a color palette just from nature.
Well, so I just said mint green, and I was kind of like poking fun at like the aesthetic that I too am like appeased by, right? Yeah. Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
But I wrote a poem about this. It's on my like my doc website that I shared with you, right? It's like, if you're looking for inspiration, look at how many different shades of green a forest has, and then think about the color palettes that we have access to in our on Instagram or in tools that we have online, and how limited they're. Like, oh, here's forest green, here's light green, here's this other green, but like when you take out the nuance, you're missing half the beauty. And so,
strong opinions about exceptions, strong opinions about bounds for colors. Sources of inspiration that burst out to you?
Can I go on a flower walk and take photos of different plants and fauna in the area, flora and fauna in the area, and then we could pull from kind of what's in our geolocation that also matches with what color palettes might be in the flora fauna vast geography of India, and like see if we could like bring in ecology and like, because we're just surrounded by nature.
I love that as a broad concept. And as a 26-day concept, I think that there's probably something intuitive. Like, we've been here for months, right? So there's something intuitive already in us to acknowledge like sunsets and fauna and food and sand, and it may mean us taking one of these like kind of well-adjusted palettes and seeing what resonates for us, just as like, again, working colors.
Okay, let's do the color of that tea tree plant.
This pinkish thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, can you notice that leaf at the bottom? Should I go like bring it in, like take a little piece off? Does that mean?
Is it mean to the plant? Probably. If you love something, let it be. Observe it. Right?
Okay.
We're picking it, assaulting it.
I'm just going to tear it in.
Well, we can see it.
Okay, fine. I was trying to show the camera, you know?
The camera will have, we'll post this as a thing.
Fine.
Follow up.
Okay, so on the leaf, if you notice that it's pink on the outside, and then it goes from like tones of brown to green on the inside. I know what you're thinking. Brown isn't necessarily a palatable color, but that's on the back. Like, I'm just going to leave you with that.
Why don't we put it there? Yeah. Inspiration is, what do you call that plant?
A tea tree plant.
That's tea tree? No. Jesus, okay. I always wondered what a tea tree plant looked like.
I think that's tea tree. That's what someone told me a long time ago, and I've just been calling it a tea tree plant.
Okay. Last element of branding thing, and I know I've stolen the whole agenda, Typeface.
Deferred.
Okay. I think for a bunch of these, just for expedience, we're going to have to go like, what are your bounds? Where can I go? Okay, decide.
I mean, I could spend, as I was just going to make a whole artist residency on
You're
color.
about to pull out a Tumblr and start to talk to me about colors. Like, no. 26 days.
Okay, so I like.
Let me tell you about my experience of color. I appreciate it. And there is a space for it. There is definitely a space for it.
I defer for your best interest.
We want to get somewhere.
Both of our interests.
Yeah. Okay. No, because I think some of these things, where I'm trying to use a lens, like 26 days definitely is a lens. The other one's Instagram. And like making that, just using that as a bit of a boundary just to simplify decisions.
We're not doing this for the gram, just so you know. Are we?
No, we're specifically doing this. We're literally, by definition of that last thing, only doing it for the gram. Just for bounds, just for some bounds. Because there are things like, when you think about the icon, for example, if you got to like size it for Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the shit, what's like different variations of it? Where is it going to appear? And oh my God, there's a header image. So when you do the icon and the header, does that make sense? Versus Instagram actually goes like, stop going too deep into it, get your icon right, get your handle right, and away you go, right? And so partly in terms of like fonts and color schemes, it's like what color schemes come up from the filters, for example, that makes this really easy for us to post the next thing, or what typefaces are inside there that we can quickly change because we can't use a custom typeface is what's in there. And then we can use analogous ones when we want to make a post. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm getting nerdy on the brand side, right? But like that's kind of, I wanted to embrace one platform because we want to get out there. And then also the constraints of that platform, because it'll simplify some of the decision making that is like non-critical for us to show. Okay, so like I really want to say I appreciate what you just shared right now. And like actually this whole like first bit of the conversation, because this is like kind of where I struggle as an artist or as like someone that creates stuff and wants to put it out there, which is how do I not make many decisions, right? Like how do I be like, okay, cool, this is the font I'm going to use, this is the color, this is the template, boom, boom, boom. Now all I have to do is fill in the blank with what's actually important, with the words, the poetry, the visual, right. The actual doing of. So like, thanks, Auntie. Thank you, Auntie. Because it is, I guess social media or presenting yourself in any form or fashion is inherently a branding exercise. Yeah, which is like kind of weird, but 'tis the world we live in. It's embracing the constraints so that we can create more fiercely without getting lost in some of the little decisions. And so some of these things are just about making decisions so that we can just move forward, right? And we'll find new spaces in that. It's like, okay, you got colors, but what about gradients? And what about animations? And like, maybe those things will show up for us. I'm curious. Okay. I stole the agenda. But those are three things that were near the top of my mind, just because we're getting that pulled out of us for the thing next week. So I have like a very different agenda planned. I imagined that you would. Like so different. I love that though. This is why it's going to work. We're going to cover a lot of space together. So I'm going to go from the macro to the micro. So this is the approach here. So facts. We receive our spices. Hopefully. Some spices. We receive a version of our spices tomorrow. And the mission to pay that man was really intense. But when I finally got to the Paloma supermarket, first of all, the guy that was supposed to do it was getting into a huge fight with his mom. And I just watched him fight with his mom for like 20 minutes, like the owner of the shop and her son kind of thing. And I'm like, should I come back? Auntie can help you. Like, I just sit, have some chai. Anyways, so we paid the man. He's coming tomorrow. So like start at the top of, I think like
my agenda was more so to like walk us through logic and like get on the same page. And then the final action item is to determine our menu because that's pressing. Because we need to offer it tomorrow for them for our hotel stint next week. So I wanted to start with like the idea of like oral tradition. We touched on it yesterday, and I really appreciate that that we brought it up because the word tradition and traditional Indian food and like there's a lot of things get caught in that filter. And what we're doing is adapting. We're doing a paleo vegan-ish menu. And that's adapting a lot of like the traditional fats and ingredients that, you know, they use in India, right? Yeah. And so like the cow, at least in Hinduism, is like super sacred, using milk from the cow. Like it was like, there's so many strings to pull there. But in my experience of like receiving oral history and just being a receiver is that, and that's traditionally how our histories have been passed down is through oral history. Like a lot of ancient religions or ancient cultures rather, not religion. I guess religions too. Anyway, it's complicated. And what's beautiful about the oral tradition is that it's oral. The way that it's transmitted is a way that's memorable. So Sanskrit, for example, is like a code. Like you can't really misinterpret Sanskrit in the same way that you can misinterpret English, right?
Really?
Yeah, it's like it's shared in a way where it's very clear. And you know, when I say that, is it the word that's shared? Is it the mannerism in which it's shared? I'm not exactly sure, but it is shared in a way where it's very clear. And that clarity is to hold potency, but not rigidity.
Potency, but not rigidity.
So what I mean by that is one of the beautiful things about oral culture is that it adapts and evolves as your environment, as your time, as your circumstance requires you to evolve. And so like the way our bodies are in this moment is the way that our food ecosystem is in this moment is significantly different than like our ancestral food ecosystem. Even like not even that far for you, like going to your grandma's house, like when you were a little kid, like the food ecosystem there is so different than what we have here. And so the quality of the ingredients tastes different. Access to those ingredients tastes different. Like our bodies respond to ingredients differently. Maybe it's our bodies or how the food is actually like harvested. And so I wanted to just like reference that like oral tradition doesn't mean rigidity, and like be really clear that like we have the opportunity and the ability to experiment and not feel like we're like, I don't know, bastardizing tradition or something like that. You know?
Do you want to be like a good steward of what we're translating for this audience?
Yeah, well, I want to be a good steward to like understand our shared ancestral lineages, right? Like, and what's really shared about our lineages is geography and, you know, a few other new, like, and the fact that we're both diasporic humans, but like there's so much difference also. Anyways, I'm like going on tangents here as I float into ideas in my mind.
Rain cloud. I'll be your rain guy, you know, I'll be the droplet.
Oh my God.
But like, no, I mean, I appreciate you setting a standard. So you've got language that's potent, but not,
rigid.
Potent, but rigid. And so is that what you're trying to do with the food? You want to take the intention of the recipes of the food, the history of the food. You want it to be potent, but not rigid because we're translating it for here.
100%.
Got it.
And like where the potency comes in is like our spices, right? You can't necessarily swap spices very easily, but you can still allow other foods, other like ingredients to absorb the flavor of those spices and still hold the same sentiment that we're intending for.
Yeah.
And let's be seasonal about it kind of thing.
Totally. Just be
and
local.
paleo and healthy and
I mean, it's such a lush place that I would regret not using local ingredients while we're in the midst of really great vegetation, you know?
yeah. So anyways, I wanted to like get your thoughts and comments or get on the same page about that feeling,
Totally.
that sentiment.
I want to be as thoughtful as possible. And I think this is where like we cook, and so we have some experience with like having to translate stuff in the kitchen for ourselves. I think it's beautiful that things like, whole turmeric exists here. I've never used whole turmeric before. Yeah. And so it's like, how does one use whole turmeric? And like, how do you substitute whole turmeric when I've only ever used turmeric powder, right? Like what's the ratio, for example? But I also think we have tons of really great resources like all the aunties that we know and our own moms and just like kind of ask them through this.
And a bunch of chefs, right, that are of many genders. So
right. So I'm all about that. And I think as we start to put all of the recipes we want to explore on our list and start to draw down ones that make sense for us here, we could probably phone a friend on some of those and get like a consult. Because I think some people are going to know not just the practicalities of cooking in batch, and we're in a home kitchen and we'll have access to an industrial kitchen, but also like some of the like hidden histories of some of these dishes. Like, oh yeah, it actually used to be done that way, right? Like I'm really curious about whole turmeric because like, wait, what? I've never used it, though I've eaten turmeric my entire life. So like, what is the history of this thing? How else was it used? Was it soaked? Was it bashed? Was it always in a paste? So, and I know you have some of these answers, and I'm also curious to know when we open up our suitcase and whatever's in there, because it'll be like a little bit like Iron Chef, right? Like here's what we got, and here's what we have to augment.
Yeah,
and
Iron Chef.
Here's what we're trying to go, and what can we use? Because I also think the history of food is also about being resourceful, right? And having to be seasonal and having to do stock gaps and stuff like that. So. I'm excited about that exploration.
Me too.
It's going to pull more information out of us and out of our networks
and out of our moms,
and then out of our moms. Which, yeah, I mean that's a huge wealth of this education side.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's great.
So, potent but not rigid is ethos for translating recipes.
No, I like that. Yeah, that's it. Okay, and so. I wanted the next item on the agenda on my end is the menu of India.
The menu of India. Okay.
Well, so, I mean, we are two human beings that represent two different regions of India and could probably even barely represent our region. And it's impossible. I mean, when I think of when I think of this, when I think of what we're doing, I think of like diversity and inclusion. And I think of like a boardroom or like a meeting room. And there's like one person of color that's asked to represent all people of color, every customer that is black, white, or yellow. Can you please tell us? And it's like, actually, no, I can't. And so it makes me laugh because I'm sure in different ways we've been in that position in corporate or business related settings. And so now here we are like representing, because we're saying come eat our Indian food to Costa Ricans and local humans that haven't really experienced Indian food before, ever. Like Joseph has never.
Some people, like someone like Joseph's our tuk-tuk driver, right? So he's like also not on a food tour necessarily, but
he's from San Jose.
He's from San Jose, and I'm sure he's eaten well, and they have access to really great ingredients. But I also think about some of like your former landlord and some of the other Americans and Canadians here who absolutely will call out bullshit on bad Indian food.
Oh, well, I'm not talking about bad Indian food, but
I'm sorry, I mean less bad, but more about like, this is not a great expression. This is not a memorable expression of Indian food. Given that if you come from a place like Toronto, like you are probably eating auntie's cooking, by extension, of course, translated for the restaurant environment, but you're not completely dumb about what these flavors are, right?
So I guess like in a way, like when we talk about menus of India, I like feel like we're just going to cook all of the dishes that our favorite dishes that we grew up with, but also like the dishes that we recognize from restaurants or things that we've gone to as well that we feel would be palatable to people.
Yeah. Approachable for this, satisfying, of value, right? Yeah. So you start to like have to put it through a bunch of different lenses to make it viable for this place. Right? So, but I think that we have to, we may just have to like embrace that we're going to have like 5 to 10 shots, like 5 to 10 meals we're going to make over 26 days. And we're going to try to keep some records so that we've done a pretty honest job of covering dishes we're curious about, dishes that, you know, this audience may want to eat, and know that we're going to leave tons of white space.
No, we are. And so I guess like I was never expecting us to hit like many of the notes that are of Indian cuisine. But given everything that's happened in India over this past year and like people acknowledging that India is the largest democracy, that India has 1.4 billion people. Like if you never looked at India before, you 100% heard about India during this pandemic year because of the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's all happened in India. And so I guess I want to use it also as like a teachable moment, you know, like, hey, cool. Like India is 16.5% of the world's population and has 37 different cuisines. And right now we're representing this cuisine, just so you know, like, and so that they, you know, I think it also falls in line with like the politics that are happening in India right now of like Hindu Sattva kind of thing, like where there's a dominant religion and culture that's trying to be aggressive around the whole country. Like,
yeah, it's nationalism, the Indian expression of it, right?
Yeah. And I'm like,
yeah. Well, and then you can also play the sort of the wealth spectrum, right? Because not that long ago, India was the world's richest country, right? That's something like 40% of GDP globally. This is only in the last few hundred years. And we think about India as like this poor place, and it's dal, and it's thalis, and it's all vegetarian food. But like India had like dynastic wealth and was ruled by different religious rulers over history. And so not only do you have like the everyday peasant food, right? Like whole lentils and stuff like that, but you have like super ornate, super sophisticated, complicated dishes too. And so I think when we think about it, we're thinking about like what is really approachable, but that's like the everyman food. But imagine opening up like opening up the Taj Mahal version of like a cookbook and be like, what did this guy who built a fucking palace, a mausoleum out of marble eat? Because yeah, sure he ate dal, but he might have eaten some other shit. And was it only grown in India? Probably not, because India was at the nexus of all these trade routes. And so you probably have access to all these other spices and techniques, right? So I think like there's so many layers that it's going to be, I think it'd be interesting because we'll teach ourselves some things about that. And we can also start to teach, like it'll be like the pin will have all this metadata, right? It's from here, from this tradition, probably from this social class. Maybe it's this season, right? And we don't have to get super anthropological about it, but I'm curious about like our blind spots because
100%,
you know, I don't know what it's like to eat in a palace in northern India, for example.
Well, and I also like, I think it's just important to acknowledge this again. I'm just like building the container for us, right? Like this is like, you know, we're going to go through these thought experiments, and I think that's part of the fun of having these conversations that make us think. Also, I have a secret fourth thing on the agenda that I will slide in there. But let's go tactical. So we kind of like macroed into our micro moment here.
Yep.
So we ordered spices from New York City, and a really lovely human named Sonia went and...
Sonia Auntie, thank you.
Sonia Auntie, shout out to Sonia Auntie if you're watching this. She went to an Indian store and her message back to me, we sent her a massive list.
Unfair.
Massive list of Indian spices to get us because we tallied that in the course of 26 days that we will feed 500 people. Or at least we will use 500 people's worth of spices. We might use some of that in experimentation, but we are expecting to feed a lot of people in a town that doesn't have that many people.
Well, there are 1,000 permanent residents of Guyana, so half of the people here are going to eat this food.
Going to eat the food. Please come eat our food. Please. And so Sonia went to the Indian grocery store and she's like, Parul, Uncle G hooked it up. I would not have been able to figure out what these spices were if it wasn't for Uncle G there. And I thought that was just just such a brilliant response to the list of spices we got. So next week we're cooking at a hotel.
At a hotel.
We're cooking at a hotel. We have a vegan supper club residency where we will be cooking there at least 3 times this month, if not more. We are tentatively plotting a pop-up restaurant / art-like experience, maybe for 1, 2, or 3 days, TBD. And I am sure we will be serving takeout containers from our homestead.
We have to work this through the test kitchen, so beneficiaries 1 and 2 are right here.
There's also markets happening,
Right.
the farmers markets.
Right.
And this is all the things that we planned in a very short period of time.
26 days, sprint.
So for next Thursday's menu.
Want to get into the menu?
Yeah.
Okay, I have the same menu, same thing on my list.
Great. I wanted to get in the menu.
Okay.
I also want to get my computer charger,
Okay.
which is recording our audio.
Okay.
ERP.
Probably pretty critical. But you know what? Let me just acknowledge what you're saying around people helping. There have been so many people that have stepped up to help this process already. And we didn't really have very much. We still have 3 Instagram posts and a semi-soft brand on Instagram. But it's a lot of people have been excuse me, what? And have stepped up to help, and have been super generous about that, which I think is of course, is the power of the relationships we have and the people that care about us. And I think there's something just super powerful about food because food is what you eat, but food is this practice, right? And it's food is memory. Food is getting to connect you to a different time and place. And so I think a lot of people sort of understand that.
Yeah.
And I think I'm surprised because there's not a lot of Indian things happening here, but how quickly people respond to the opportunity to eat home-cooked Indian food. So I'm pretty excited about fulfilling people's hopes in that sense.
Me too. I honestly it's been it was surprising how quickly people open these opportunities up for us to cook. I was amazed. It was I'm wow, okay, this is happening. So
Menu.
Okay. So something I noticed, there are a few moments of Indian food being cooked in for example, the Vegan Supper Club. It's the only data point to have actually. And so what I see is chana masala, cauliflower centered dishes, I guess dal dishes, but dal's a really broad thing, and curried vegetables. So those are broadly what I've seen here, and so wondering what we can offer people for a little bit of diversity from that.
Yeah.
And also, I don't like cauliflower.
I'm writing that down. Parul doesn't like cauliflower.
I think it's because my dad loves aloo gobi, which is potato and cauliflower, in a masala, and we'd eat it every week. And I'm no, Mom, no. So we have a menu here.
Okay.
So So yeah, in the spirit of keeping it paleo and veganish, and the reason, like, okay, let's clarify, the vegan-ish part is only a sub of animal protein here or there. We might make a dish with animal protein, but it's going to be dairy-free, gluten-free, grain low, if not grain-free at all times. And mostly...
Yeah. I think we also want permission to, like, use eggs, right? Which, like, is probably not offensive to most people.
Also, it's hard to get tofu that's, like, really good quality here, right?
You need the protein, right? I think that's something that everybody is probably going to want, just to have a complete meal. But also to, like, have something that's actually satisfying at the end.
We'll see, because, like, in the Vegan Supper Club, that's, like, legit vegan. Like, we got to be like, we're not using ghee or any kind of animal-based products in that regard. So
well, that's we use legumes, no, or like chickpeas.
Exactly, it's just the sub of protein that might make it not vegan or vegan.
Right.
That's, like, the only thing.
But we'll call that out.
Well, yeah, obviously. So, like, to clarify, we're not using ghee.
Yeah.
We're not using honey in any of our dishes.
Except for if it's veganish.
Except if it's veganish.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have cashew butter tofu / cashew butter chicken.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Because at the hotel we have some folks helping us cook, we could make the same dish times veggie versus not veggie.
Totally.
I was thinking of making. We have to try this in our test kitchen first, though. Biryani quinoa, like vegetable biryani quinoa, made of course with a side of Parul's homemade coconut yogurt, but we could make it raita, coconut yogurt raita, with like the masalas, the grated cucumber in there, and then also pickled onion, and pickled carrots, to be a side of that. Although, like, that's not really a traditional pairing with those dishes, but I think having some fermented foods is really nice, because it is like a healing thing. Yeah, so that's kind of what I have on my list there.
I like it.
There's also like a million other dishes that we have on our huge spreadsheet.
We just have to start somewhere.
I just picked kind of like a familiar dish that is going to be rich and savory and hit the note for people that are missing that, like, South Asian cuisine right now, / me missing that South Asian cuisine right now.
Totally.
And those are like pretty accessible dishes to modify and experiment with in our test kitchen.
Right.
Yeah.
I love these. Yeah, and I totally get that. That we need to, like, sit with our Venn diagram and find the thing that is approachable for people. And tasty, and then the specific stuff we need to work out for the hotel, and maybe we'll get invited back if we're that good, is to make it really easy for, like, their existing kitchen staff to make, because they're, like, line cooks, they're not, like, chefs, and they don't come from this tradition.
And I think we'll be in the kitchen with them, right? We'll be cooking alongside and doing
but our Spanish is limited.
My Spanish is limited?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So it'll be like, we just have to, like, acknowledge that there is a language gap there, and we will get some help. So there's, like, that aspect of complexity just to manage for that. The other one is food cost, because this is one of the places that, like, professional food service has to think about, and they traditionally need the food to cost no more than 30% of the sticker price. And so, like, working back something like cashews on a portion basis, we just need to, like, do the math, because they're going to order it on our behalf, and then of course order a little bit so that if there are errors or whatever's, we can, like, control for that. And then figuring out something that's, like, actually interesting, because I think everyone's going to know a butter chicken, right? Not everyone's going to know biryani. I'm excited about biryani. I hope we make biryani at some point in this.
Like a chicken biryani kind of thing, or like because you mentioned biryani being like a traditional meat base dish for you?
Biryani is like a Muslim, like it's an Islamic dish that spreads from Iraq right through India, right? So you talk to Arabs and they're like, yeah, I mean, I actually made a biryani once with this Iraqi girl, and she's like, yeah, here's how we make biryani. I was like,
Yo.
how the fuck is this happening, right? And you start to realize actually the history of some of these dishes, many of these dishes, aren't what you think they are.
I won't be surprised.
Right?
I won't be surprised. And also, I wanted to make that potato.
Yes.
I don't remember what did you call it?
So in Goa, we call these potato chops.
Potato chops.
And it actually turns out that they make something similar here.
Cool.
So they would actually know what this is about.
So that could be our appetizer, like a potato chop. That's a really heavy meal.
Well, let's like look. We're putting stuff on the board now, right? So we're gonna have to like narrow down and figure out food costs and actual like satisfying plate.
Because like I'm also thinking about tummy ache and like being mindful, because I think Indian food, because of this excitement that we're both experiencing right now of like, give me the lush, give me the rich, give me the delicious, is maybe the pitfall of the gluttonous customer, aka me, when I go to an Indian restaurant. I was like, feed me everything.
Yeah. We're gonna save those people. I think like the top two for me anyway, the things that really get me is like food that floats in ghee, and there's no ghee coming into this equation, and sneaky cream, right? Fucking finishing creams here and there where they're not even like thinking about it. They're just like, yeah, you just need it for texture.
I don't think it's ghee, by the way. I think it's probably canola oil or some sort of other oil.
Whatever the heavy oil.
Ghee doesn't really. It's not as sticky as.
Agreed. It's whatever the substitution they're making is that's
so oil,
abundant and cheap.
And cream.
Right.
And for me, grains, like poor quality rice.
Right.
And gluten.
Right.
This little one does not respond well.
I'm curious about doing the biryani too with something like jackfruit, which would make it fully a vegan dish. I know you have an aversion to jackfruit, but like this is an opportunity to use true, like to put our hands on it and see if we can turn it into something. Because also jackfruit in Goa is like known for giving you terrifying nightmares, I think is the right word.
Oh my god, dude. Yeah. So we want to give these people terrible nightmares?
When it's eaten improperly. So it's eaten late in the day, it's eaten in high quantities, and you're like not coming with that warning. And so portioning it, preparing it, making sure that it's like not actually the last meal people are eating.
Got it. So like, I mean, then we could just modify the quantity of jackfruit in the biryani. But what you said, I didn't experience this because I grew up vegetarian, and so vegetable plow, vegetable biryani was so normal for me. So like, I didn't experience what you shared, which is the beauty of having a protein in the rice is that it cooks in the rice, and the fats and the juices and everything kind of merges and melds and creates this like beautiful symphony that is what we know as a version of biryani. And so that wasn't ever my experience. So I'm curious, and I've had very shitty jackfruit experiences, but I'm open to changing that.
We have a test kitchen, a suitcase, some suitcase of spices coming. So like it would be, this is the time, right? If we want to know the answers to some of these things, we can.
Also, we're in the land of jackfruit, so.
Yes. It's mango season, so it's like, would we?
I wanted to make mango lassi. Well, so it doesn't have to be lassi because lassi is quite heavy, but we can make some sort of mango drink or mango something.
Coconut yogurt mango lassi.
It's a lot. Okay, well, yeah.
But like little ones, not like a
little
like
shot glasses.
Liter.
So we're just kind of propelling my coconut yogurt empire.
Just starting it. It's giving it a reason to start, right? For a lot of these things, it's like, we want to know the answer. Well, let's create.
We got 10 coconuts.
Perfect pull coming out of it right now.
We got 10 coconuts coming tomorrow morning.
Market demand. Yeah. Okay, so based on what we just said, is there something that like jumps out to you that is like, yo, we should totally, appreciating all the other constraints, food costs, complexity, language barrier, first time, I think, doing, maybe at that point, first time.
The only thing that I'm questioning is the quinoa biryani. Everything else I feel really confident about.
Yep. Like a cashew butter chicken.
Feel super confident about that. I've made vegan versions of that before. and dairy-free versions of that. But quinoa, like something that's beautiful about biryani is the fluffiness of the rice. And my mom told me one of the secrets to making your rice beautiful and fluffy is to squeeze lemon while it's cooking. And also to soak your rice overnight, or soak your rice for an hour before you cook it. Wash your rice. If you ever watched, what was that guy's name? That like YouTube sensation, that Uncle Freddy, Uncle something. Oh my God, I'm sure someone knows what I'm talking about. Uncle whatever. And it was this like Asian dude in the UK that was talking about how to make fried rice. Anyways, I'm maybe not saying this. I don't remember his name, so I'm just gonna leave it. Maybe I think we need to sit down and write out the ingredients, though.
Just work out. Let them help us a little bit with the food cost, because they'll get wholesale prices, which also help us. So
on close, like to like kind of wrap this session, I wanted to.
Wait a second. We're not ready to close.
Oh, we're not.
Let's talk about potato chops.
Okay.
Have you had potato chops before?
No.
Okay. The potato chop is like something that's actually universal, it turns out. And this one, I think, is, to me, this is like one I know we can execute. Like, out of the box, I know we can execute it from all those different constraints. And also, it's just super satisfying, because who doesn't love a little, like, light fried potato, right? And I know that you need potatoes to keep your mind running.
Doesn't like a little bit of fried potato.
So I'd like to push that one forward too as we work out our menu. And I love that you brought out pulao, because that's for us going. I don't know if that's like in every India dish, but like pulao and goa is like that's the shit. Yeah, you're eating pulao. Whenever people love you, they're making you pulao basically instead of rice.
Wait, what's the difference between pulao and rice? Oh, it's like okay.
Made with like stock and spices, right?
Yeah.
And cinnamon sticks and stuff like that. And then the stuff you said too around the pickles, I think we should just like make this, like the pickled onions, carrots.
We have to make. We're gonna make it
mango,
now. Yeah.
And then it'll probably fit in parallel with what you're talking about with like coconut yogurt and variations of coconut yogurt, just to drink and to use the raita and stuff like that, right? It's something that it goes on the side of the plate. It does not take time on that day for food prep, but is also specifically like very Indian, right? And you always like imagine to be able to do that in small ways if we're talking about like doing the food mart or like the food market and doing bodega and stuff like that, because a very small amount will go a long way, and it's kind of like unforgettable, right? Even a very basic meal is elevated with this really healthy fermented food, but that adds a punch of flavor, right? All right. That's all I wanted to acknowledge here in responding to some of the things you said.
And also fermented food needs an ingredient that you can't replace, which is time.
Right. The secret ingredient is love.
As my mom would say.
As your mom.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, we're going to hammer out some of these details in the back end.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about...
Agenda item 4?
The last thing. I think it might be really interesting to maybe read a book or two together on some of the things that we're talking about. Read some books about food in India or culture in India. I have a few books. Maybe we'll save that for our next conversation. I'll pull out the list of books and a little synopsis. And there's some beautiful books about Indian culture for the Indian diaspora, about Indian food in India, and like the misnomers of like, like
everything's a curry.
Well, no,
is that one of the books?
No, like the word sugar in Hindi is chine, something like that. It's I'm like blanking right now because I'm like toggling Spanish and French through my head and trying to find the Hindi. Anyways, but the origin story, it's called that because it's from China.
Sugar in India came from China?
Something like that. That's like an example. I'm tired.
We'll come back.
Circle back
and address that one with references. I'm happy to read a long poem or a long essay on foods. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Okay, Uncle.
Okay.
Wait, okay, Auntie.
Okay. Sorry, you're busy in the kitchen. I forgot. If it's audio.
We want to put... Actually, let's find audiobooks. That's the perfect thing.
That's what yeah, audiobook. Okay, Auntie?
Do you feel complete?
I feel complete.
Today's what, Thursday? Day 2? decisions. What are the decisions we've made here? We've decided to push forward on brand. We've agreed to cataloging this journey in minute detail because there's only 26 days of it.